Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, a series of conversations with the men and women whose ideas, visions and philosophies defined contemporary India. My guest today is one of India's great living artists. He is also a poet, a philosopher and a humanist. He's deeply rooted in the traditions of India, but his work has been accessible, applauded and presented in the museums of the world. I'm delighted to welcome Amar Nath Sehgal. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
I should share that it was 20 years ago that I first met you and had the privilege of making my first film on you as a filmmaker. And I sense that from that time, in recent years certainly, that your enormous passion and the enormous agony that the earlier work represented to social concerns and issues has begun to find a more activist expression, so that you're not just an artist who's sort of responding to the environment and expressing your sensibility, but you're more activist now. You have set up a foundation both based in Luxembourg and in India to support young artists and other people in the crafts. You have recently produced a series of posters against drug abuse. You led a campaign in Delhi against hoardings. Did you find that in some ways that your art was not containing your anguish?
Well, the thing is, as an artist, with my sensitivities, I perceived all these happenings. My children never took drugs, say. I felt that other people's children should not take drugs. So I took to the drug abuse campaign, and I went with that to America, and I was really rewarded with a lot of intensive encouragement that, well, my posters and this were the best ever produced. Even the drug administration in Vienna, they also felt the same thing. So I did that. About hoarding, I felt that, well, it is lending a great nuisance in a civil life, in the life of a city, in the urban life, and I felt that it should be removed. There was a big hoarding next to my house, and it was a big eyesore for me whenever I was entering, as if it was going to fall on me. So I made a case against them. They wanted to bribe me, they wanted to pay me to withdraw the case. I said, nothing doing. I want this to be removed and all over Delhi to be removed. So I made a case against the governor and even against the MCD, Municipal Committee of Corporation and so on. And I succeeded.
But what prompts someone with sort of an artistic sensibility, a sensitivity, to go out into the public domain and take on the rough and tumble of the judicial process, for example?
The thing is, you have to sometimes take a stride which is very important, which is the social consciousness, which really is aggravating the public mind and so on. But the thing is, people are so shy taking such a cause because they feel it's a loss of time, loss of money, a loss of an effort. But I felt, well, it was time that I did it, so I did it.
You know, at that phase, some years ago, you also took on the establishment for the manner in which they treated your sculpture outside the Delhi International Airport, which had been completely defaced and strange colors had been put on it and had been sort of virtually abandoned there.
Well, you know it better than anybody else because you made a film on it too, and it was defaced, but I succeeded in getting it renovated, making a new one which is outside the Indira Gandhi International Airport. And even when I come by an airline and I talk to the air hostesses and others, everybody knows it because it's well lighted, well received and so on. The thing is, there are, you know, the consciousness of the people to look after your work is not there. Any artwork is neglected by the people, by the society, by the bureaucracy and so on. But you have to fight it out. And I did.
And you won.
I won. Now I have to win the case in the Vigyan Bhavan. I know that I am on a very good wicket, and the judge is even in my favor because it has proved beyond doubt that they mutilated the work. It's proved beyond doubt that part is missing and so on.
So what I should explain is that you had this mural in Vigyan Bhavan, and following the fire when Vigyan Bhavan was being renovated, these murals were mutilated and
No,
not
this was
preserved.
done before the fire. If it was done with the fire, I could not even make a case against the government. It was done before the fire and very consciously. They could have asked me. They could have come to me, well, we want to take it down. I would have helped them to take it down and get it stored and put it elsewhere. I mean, I do not stand on that ceremony that, well, a work is absolutely essential. Well, it can be really renovated and put up in a new place. But they did ask me and they just mutilated it. And then people sold it from here and there. I do not know this. They made money or whatever it is. But one third is missing.
So do you feel that, when a work of art is completed, you feel a continuing relationship with it?
I don't feel, but the society should feel. It's the responsibility of the society to look after the artwork. If you put up an artwork here, nobody looks after it. If you put up a work outside the country, you see that the work is standing there.
What is the value of art in public spaces?
The value of art is still not there, I feel, except the big sculpture which are on a very high pedestal and nobody can reach them. Otherwise, any really artwork, an abstract work, will be cut away and taken away or sold in the open market for a junk price.
But your works are sort of adorned and are housed in Paris and Berlin and in several international capitals in public spaces. And what is the significance? Why does the community need to invest in art in public spaces like that?
Well, the thing is, you see, art is related to society. Aesthetics, unless it is close to the society, it does not get anywhere. It gives a joy, a certain sense of values, and it really portrays what is happening. In the historical context, art is very essential. Our culture is what art was before 2,000 years before. And now the modern art should be treated the same way, but still we are not in a stage that we accept it in entirety.
Art, our classical traditions in art have been largely imitative, where you imitate, and then they have been based on the religious traditions. In terms of sort of the modern traditions, contemporary traditions of art, which are somewhat more abstract, do you think that we have the sensibility to respond to these forms and shapes and what they evoke?
The thing is, in time to come, it will be known whether we responded or not. But we must give a full chance of freedom to the artist to create. And with that freedom he is creating at this time. Many spirits of art are seen time after it is created. I mean, you have to give a lapse of 20, 30 years. I was once with a curator of a gallery in Washington, and I said, what is your way of acquiring here? He said, we only acquire after 30 years after the death of the artist. I said, this is not a good thing for any artist to know. But he said, well, we only know whether he's living or dead in terms of his creativity. So this is what it is, that we have to give a lapse of time for people to assimilate, so that the idea of the creativity sags in the mind of the people or not. I mean, otherwise it can't be taken for granted at the time when it is created.
What do you think is the relevance, the value of art per se? Why should the society and the community invest in art? What does it pay back to the community?
The thing is, it's a joy. Its aesthetics is a joy in itself, and that you give as a sort of freedom to the creator to create and a freedom to the spectator to perceive. And that perception should be left completely to the society.
So this feeling of joy in aesthetic, does that happen even when the artist and you experience the agony and the pain that you're portraying and capturing?
Well, that of course should happen, but sometimes it does not. Society is sometimes very hard-hearted. You portray something very sensitively, and you portray the anguish, pathos and suffering, but nobody sees it. I mean, even they just pass by, it does not reflect their sensibility. It does not really go deeper beyond their immediate viewing.
How conscious are you of your audience and who you're making your sculpture for? So, I mean, is there a difference for the sculpture that you create and exhibited in a square in Berlin or something that's exhibited at near the Lodi Gardens in Delhi?
Well, the thing is, you have to leave it to the people. I can't be just a judge of my own work that way. You have to leave it. You do the work in all sensitivity, with all dedication, and with all your heart in it. But it's left to the society how they take it. And sometimes, society is hard-hearted. I mean, you see what is happening in Bosnia, you see what is happening in Czechia, you see what is happening in Moscow, and the terrorism or Kargil and so on. There is a lot of pathos and suffering. And we have to create a consciousness of suffering so that society does not burn itself out.
You started, you trained as an engineer, and it was your sort of skills as in working with materials that led you into working with sculpture and bronze and the solidity of it. And then you have evolved into working in numerous other forms. You sketch, you write poetry. Which impulse translates into which form?
Well, to me, all art is the same. It's only the employment of material. You have to be good at words to make a poem. You have to be good at something. You have to be good with material to make a good sculpture. You have to be good with colors to make a composition. The thing is, sensitivity is one. Perception is one. It's how you can mold the material into the form which is artful, which is whether poetry or sculpture or graphic or bronze and so on and so forth.
How does the effort, the integrity, the intensity of your feeling and craft, what happens in between?
There is a sort of relationship, I feel.
What is the relationship? What is the process?
Well, the thing is, it's a very funny thing. Sometimes you feel something and you do not know how it comes, but sometimes it just travels through. Whether it travels through senses, whether there is perception in the mind or in the body or in the brain, but there is perception and the execution are so related.
Are there sort of physical sensations that you feel you want to sort of express?
No, it's the mind. It is the mind that works.
And what's very interesting in your work, and even though that you have been so deeply rooted in the Indian tradition, you have also been extremely Western, or shall I say global, in your exposure.
Well, the thing is, you have to perceive things, what is happening all over, and the happening all over affects us. The media has brought birds close to one another. What happened in Moscow, we know it the very next day, maybe the very next hour. What happened in Pakistan, we knew it within half an hour. Well, these happenings affect us, and this is how, perceptions are so cute, the sensitivity is so much that happenings anywhere affect an artist. These happenings are related to what you create, and this is what I did all the time, and I still keep doing it.
Your work has also been used beyond just the museums. You've been working on things like postal stamp. We discussed the posters on drug abuse. We've discussed public spaces, private collections, a whole range of applications. Do you have an audience in mind when you create, or do you respond to a need? What comes first?
To be very frank with you, you never have an audience unless you are commissioned for it. The audience comes later. First is your idea, your dedication to the idea and the ideals. With that you create something. And when the creation comes in, then after that comes the marketing. Whether you market it yourself or the society accepts it themselves is for them to see.
And how important is this aspect of marketing, publicity, organizing things so that your work is seen and heard? Sculptures cost a lot of money to make. You can't be the ideal artist who just makes it in hopes and waits for society to respond.
You have put a nail on the head. To be very frank with you, it's very hard for an artist to survive. Unless he creates and the creation is accepted by the society, he can't create more. because after all, his link to the society is through his work. And unless the acceptance is there, he does not. But men like Van Gogh, men like Gauguin, they created and their work was not accepted, they didn't even sell. And now, of course, they are worth billions all over, you know that. But the thing is, the dedication has to be there all the time. In the modern times, you cannot survive without money and without adequate sales of your work. So whatever you create with all your dedication and with all your sensitivity, you have to see that, well, it reaches the people. It is accepted by the people. It is admired by the people, and so on and so forth. So this admiration is something which artist looks for. Rightly or wrongly, it's the ego of the artist. Unless it's fed here and there, it does not lead him to better works later, to my mind.
So when is this process of creation completed for you? When the work of art has been acknowledged, admired, received, understood by the audience, by the community, or when it's physically made, or when it's marketed, or when?
I give you one example about myself. Of course, others, many examples can be available. I collected some of my poems with which I went to Germany. And somebody met me, he said, well, I can translate your poem in German. In 1976, he brought out a volume of my poems in German. And it was at the Frankfurt Book Fair, very well received. It was noted here too. But 20 years I kept still, didn't even bother. Till the Poetry Society here felt, my God, you have poems published in German in a different language, why not here? So they started. The thing was that, well, the acceptance was at one place, it led to the acceptance in another place. A publisher published and he sold all the copies. And then a second edition came, now I'll come with the third one. The thing is, unless it is accepted, I would not have come with the third one maybe. But it gives you an impetus to create more. That, well, your work is accepted, it's liked by people, it had reviews here, elsewhere, and so on and so forth. That gives you a little more impetus to create more.
Do you feel that sort of, in the phases of your life, sort of, youth, middle age, and as you move towards being a senior citizen, you're not there yet. Do you feel a different relationship with the art forms? Is sculpture somewhat more, how do I put it, tangible, physical, requires more energy, physical energy, and you feel that that's not what you really want to engage in immediately? Do you feel any changes?
No, the thing is, sometimes you feel like doing one work or another. Sometimes the material becomes a little encumbersome, like sculpture, like painting, like clay, plaster, and so on and so forth. So you dabble with paper and paint and so on and so forth, with pencil, and you create. In the last 5 days, as a matter of fact, I must have created 4 or 5 small paintings. I enjoy it because I had the colors and so on and so forth. I was sitting on the table and spending a lot of my time on some of them. But if I was to work with the materials, probably I could not have survived because I would not have created all that I created in terms of design on piece of paper. So if the material sometimes motivates you to be quick and sharp, and all that what is within you comes out. Or if you take a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, you write a piece of poem.
But some forms like sculpture take a long time to create, and the process of translating a sensibility into form is much more complicated, complex, and dependent on many circumstances, from the person who casts your sculpture and the finishing of it in the materials and what have you. Are you sometimes frustrated between what you set out to create and what finally got created?
No. I've been lucky. Once, twice I felt I created a piece which was 7-8 feet in clay, and I was not happy and I broke it till my family came and they said, where is the piece? I said, well, it's in a dump. It's in the form of a clay because I created and I spent 3 weeks and I did not like it. Sometimes, encumbersome materials do not give you the impetus that what you've had in mind comes in the form that you wanted to create. And you feel like destroying it and you destroy it. So there are the limitations of a material. with which you are working, and the limitations are always with sculpture.
You know, we have mentioned and raised this aspect of your Indian sensibility, and yet sort of its global resonances. What is it that about being Indian or your Indianness that defines you? You spend a lot of time abroad, but you keep coming back as to India, usually to Delhi, as it were, to sort of recharge yourself. What is it that draws you back to the chaos, to the pollution, and to the poverty that we struggle with?
To be very frank with you, without India I would not survive. I could not survive. I come here not only to charge, as you said, but even to enjoy life. I know the limitation. The water is not good. There is a pollution. And for the next 3 months, the pollution is so much that everybody is suffering. You know that. And even the electricity is not fully available and so on and so forth. But India has its own charm.
What is this for you?
When you are sitting or when you are moving, you feel one with the environment, whether it's fragrance or whether it's dust. I go to Lodi Garden only for the joy of being in that place. I cannot enjoy a garden anywhere else. I mean, in Luxembourg, the gardens are very beautiful, very clean and neat, but you don't enjoy it. The nature here there is oneness with that, whether culture is impregnant with the people or the social life, but it is culture. And that we are used to. We are used to the food, we are used to the way of living, the religious symbols and so on and so forth. But we don't have all that. And the culture is not only just the language, culture is also the way of living and so on and so forth, which you cannot share with the people outside.
So what do you see now happening with your life, and what would you like to see unfold in the decades to come? What are your strivings now?
Well, it's very difficult to say. The only thing is you keep working and you enjoy the work. The life is a joy in itself as an artist, and I feel I'm blessed with that, and I feel very joyful.
You've set up this foundation in Luxembourg and in India to support the work of young artists. Why Luxembourg? What's the special relationship with Luxembourg?
I tell you one thing. When I was going around with exhibition in 60s and early 70s, I felt that I needed a home away from home. I could have made a home in Paris or anywhere else, but I made it Luxembourg because it's a small, compact, homely place. You could walk around the whole town and so on and so forth. And there I had my doctor, a friend, Bore, who is no more, and I even made his head, which I gave to the Doctors Society. He encouraged me. He said, why don't you make it? So I made some friendship, and they gave me a room to myself. And then the government said, we give you a residence forever, whenever you want to come here and stay. So
you sort of became an artist in residence as a guest of the government of
yes.
Luxembourg.
So I became they encouraged me to stay. So I move around in Europe as if it's my own home.
And in terms of your social beliefs, your social philosophy, what is your dream for India on the eve of the next millennium?
My dream is that people should be more attuned to the acceptance of art, which they are not at the moment. They are wanting the artist to work. They want to make what they say. They want to sell their works at big auctions and so on and so forth, but that is not the way. I want the artist to be accepted in society to the extent whatever he created, like to buy it, take it, hang it, and so on and so forth. That still is not there.
But in the context of the globalization of culture, in terms of perhaps the coarsening of artistic sensibility because of mass media, perhaps television, and we're on television right now, do you think that the kind of sensibility that you represent and you aspire and we applaud really has a chance?
I think so, to my mind.
What is this hope based on?
The hope is based on that, well, people are becoming more and more alive, but slowly. In 50 years, they are more alive. There used to be only 2 or 3 galleries in 47. Now there are 65 galleries in Delhi alone. You know that.
Is this just a question of fashion, or do you think it's a question of a genuine appreciation of art?
To an extent, it's half fashion and half genuine. I would say more fashion and more investment. All over the world, it's the black money that goes into the artwork. People don't buy the artwork with the money of a bank.
And what does the artist do with the black money?
Well, he only lives by it.
So do you think that Indian civilization is going to survive, is going to last, is going to thrive despite globalization? And what is the strength?
No, they will survive, I must say, because there is this certain amount of depth in the civilization and the culture. We survived for the last 2,000 years with all our cultures still intact. We wrote Mahabharata, Ramayana, Upanishads, and so on and so forth. We have the best of our dancers and artists and so on in the temples and the caves and so on, where Buddhism and all that. And we survived it. And we will survive all that, and in the next millennium, I'm sure it will go further, to my mind.
Is there anything in recent history to encourage this hope?
I think so, to my mind. I think definitely so.
What are some of these elements?
Relevance is that people are still attuned to the acceptance of the old values. Religion is there. Fundamentalism is there, to my mind. We may have destroyed a mosque here and there. But all said and done, we are still conscious that we did a wrong. And I feel that consciousness itself is one of the factors which will motivate us to be truthful and honest.
Thank you very much.